subject matter experts from the various departments within the councils. We would then work with the market, and the market could be the tech industry, be it large or small. We work with academia. We work with citizens to hear their voice as to how Dublin should be run as efficiently as possible. So a big part of our world is collaborate. So that's what we do. We're funded by the 4 local authorities, and we work with many stakeholders in the Dublin region.
So you're a facilitator of projects and research for these smart cities projects, is that it?
Yeah, we're very much, I suppose, the innovation catalyst or the innovation broker to tackling a particular problem. And how a project might get initiated is that a service owner, let's say within a council, from the waste management department or from the traffic department or from the social housing department, would come to us and say, look, you know, we've a feeling that there could be a role for technology to help us deliver our service better. Can we work with you to do a pilot and explore those opportunities? So we would take that request, our business requirement, our problem statement, and engage with the market to understand what solutions are out there. So that's one route that a project happens, and we facilitate that process. The other way a project can get initiated is that we get approached by the market. So the smart city movement is happening globally. So there's a lot of organizations that are deploying smart city solutions. Think of any city, any major international city, and then they sometimes come to Dublin and want to do a local deployment here, or even trial their solution for the first time in Dublin. So we meet with them, we understand what the value proposition is, and then we match make that particular solution with, again, an internal subject matter expert from the council. Okay. So that's another way that a project gets initiated.
So you're merging these researchers, the local councils, and private business. You mentioned sometimes them testing first-time solutions. Is it usually that you're identifying off-the-shelf products to bring to challenges, or is it redesigning new things for those challenges?
We're very much in the innovation space. So I'd say the majority of the work we do is cutting edge technology. So it's not off the shelf. However, having said that, the smart city space is now maturing, and where it makes sense, we would look to off the shelf solutions to solve a particular problem. You know, you don't have to go through the innovation pilot phase locally. If a solution has demonstrated its value, we've done an evaluation of that solution, and we feel we can deploy to a large scale one of those solutions. Yeah, we will go down that road, and that's what the project would involve. So you're going into mainstream operations straight away and bypassing the pilot phase. But I'd say that's by exception. I would say the majority of the projects we do is very much in the innovation space, co-designing with the solution provider to fine-tune their product before we might scale it up.
Brilliant. So you've basically answered the webinar already. We can probably stop there.
Okay.
But
job done.
Maybe I'll turn to Ismael and get maybe the private sector perspective on things. So thanks again for joining us, Ismael, coming all the way from Catalonia in Spain. Ismael is an electronic engineer with an MBA. He has spent 14 years working for Cellnex, first as an engineer and now as a product manager. For those of you who don't know, Cellnex is a massive multinational corporation working on wireless telecommunications, but their Irish base is here in Sandyford. So we work with them all the time on looking at how we can improve the district and indeed bring new technologies to the area. So thank you, Ismael, for joining us. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and give us a wider perspective on how Cellnex fits in to the smart city space.
Okay, thank you very much, Conor, for the invitation. It's a real pleasure for me to stay here with all of us, all of you. Okay, you let me share one moment my screen. I want to show you what Cellnex is doing and which are our capabilities in smart cities. Okay.
Great.
As you can see in my screen, Cellnex, as you have said, it's the leader infrastructure operator in Europe. Okay, we own more than 60,000 sites, and our footprint is in 8 countries. We landed in Ireland last September. Okay, and our business, there are mainly three major business. Okay, one is about broadcasting, digital and radio and TV signals. This business we are only doing in Spain. Okay. Then we diversify and we are focusing especially in Europe with TSR business, that is telecom site rental. Okay, we provide different solutions for the MNOs, the mobile network operators across Europe. Okay, so we have acquired their assets that for them there are not strategical ones, and we provide different kind of services about power supply, co-location, and as well as about connectivity. Okay, deploying new kind of let me say different solutions for improving coverage with 3G and 4G. Okay.
Okay.
And the last business, that is when I'm focused and I'm delivered there, is about smart and IoT solutions. Okay, so let me. I don't know, you can share now. You can share the screen. Okay, so what Cellnex can improve and can add value to a county council in terms of smart cities. Okay, as you can see here, we have the value proposition or about what we consider that a smart solution is. Okay, we have in one end we have let me say the data. Okay, we have to collect different kind of data according to the different services. Okay, we can talk about sensors, about smartphones, people, cameras, social networks. It doesn't matter which kind of data we can collect. Okay, this data should be transmitted through a network. Okay, here our approach as a neutral host is that depending on the use case, so depending on the smart solution that we want to provide, the network connectivity would be one or another. Okay, we're talking about fiber connectivity when we have to connect, for instance, camera. We have experience as well in deploying low power wide area networks. That these kind of networks are designed for connected things. Okay. For instance, we have Sigfox technology, LoRa technology, that are different networks that they are focused are low power, so they have low consumption and wide area. Their coverage is wide. Okay. Really and they are very useful to connect things. And then in the end, we have the platform. Okay, we have a repository. Our platform is Smart Brain platform that is designed for cities. Okay, and there what we do, basically, there are three processes. We collect this data, we transform this data in information. Okay, and once we have that, we working with the customer, working with the municipality, with the county council, we try to transform this information into knowledge, into insights. Okay, and depending on the use case that we are managing, we have to work together to get that. Because in the end, we will need about the business, we will need about the process. Because in the end, we have to streamline the whole process. And in a smart city solution, the key is that we have to process different kind of data from different sources in order to get some insights about how to improve any kind of service.
So you do each step of the chain from the data gathering, from the small sensors which are deployed around the country, bringing those in over your network, and then analyzing them using the smart brain, and then giving the insights to the correct decision makers, be it researchers or councils. Is that it?
Yes, we can do that, especially about networks. We can deploy every kind of networks, about capability about the smart brain, how collect this data. We can collect every kind of data. We have experience. In fact, we have develop the smart city platform from from Barcelona County Council, okay? And we have some use cases, some verticals that we have done the end-to-end. But here I want to remark that in order to provide a whole smart city solutions, we will need to work together with all the stakeholders, with academia, with startups, with different other companies, because in the end, no company has all the knowledge about everything that, or the whole services that a city can provide to the citizens, okay?
Brilliant. So we might jump into the actual key questions then. Maybe Ismael, I'll stick with you for now, but obviously you've explained what Cellnex is and how it interacts with the cities, but what do you think a smart city is, and where would you say, from your international experience, where they exist in the world?
Well, about a smart city definition, I think that there is no one definition about this concept. And I'm sure that if we ask the audience, different definitions will arise, okay? In my opinion, a smart city is the holistic view of a city, that leverages and applies information and communication technology in order to improve the quality of life of its citizens by ensuring a balance among, let me say, three elements: social development, environmental sustainability, and economic competitiveness.
Okay.
Because I think that a real smart solution should have taken into account in these three, let me say, three pillars, okay? And if we focus in about where do they exist, I think that, well, in Europe, we are well prepared in that sector. So I think that if we see the main capitals in Europe, there are smart cities. So for me, Berlin, Dublin, Madrid, Barcelona, Paris are smart cities.
Right. So Alan, do we fit in with the big boys of Europe, or where would you say we rank there?
Yeah, I mean, ranking is, and there's a lot of attempts at ranking internationally. It's not something in Dublin that we look too closely at. It's highly subjective. You know, however, the top cities, some of them Ismael mentioned there, you know, Amsterdam, Singapore, New York would also always be up there in any rankings that you would see. So Dublin is a little bit down in terms of those ranking lists, but has a lot going for it. The kind of ecosystem I touched on in terms of how Smart Dublin collaborates locally is extremely vibrant. And what we're starting to see now is a big push from central government, in particular from the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, deeper, providing innovation funding for these kind of projects. No, that was all pre-COVID-19. I mean, we'll see what happens once we transition out of this. But sorry, just on that point, we would see ourselves very much as part of the recovery story. Like we're in a world now where, you know, revenues of local government will be impacted. Therefore, public services have to be delivered in a more efficient way.
Yeah.
And we're in the sweet spot that we can offer solutions to these service owners as to how their public services can be delivered more efficiently. So there's definitely something there that we see ourselves part of the recovery story. Dublin is well positioned to move up the rankings. It's a nice size as well. I've used the term, it's the Goldilocks kind of city. It's a capital city. It's 1.5 million people in Western Europe. A lot of tech skill sets locally. So the route I mentioned earlier about technology companies coming to us to trial their solution is very real. They see Dublin as a favorable place and an agile place to test these solutions. So I suppose to answer your question, hopefully we'll move up these subjective rankings in the near future.
Well, that's really interesting. It sounds like we're big enough that you can test the technology and for it to be a valid case, but we're flexible enough to be able to go for whatever technology comes up. Is that right?
Absolutely. Now it's got to make sense, though. Back to that matchmaking situation before we kick off a project. We're not just going to do it just because the tech is shiny and it looks cool, or it's offered to us for free. It's got to solve a real local need, and working with the service owners, that helps us tease out what is the problem that the tech can solve.
And is that a consultation or just constant, building relationships with them, or how do you actually get that input from the councils or the operators of the infrastructure?
Yeah, constant hammering, Conor. It varies. I mean, it's hit and miss. Local government is an extremely busy place. Just keeping the lights on occupies a lot of the service owners we're talking about here. Some of them are very proactive in terms of looking at what's happening internationally, what's happening even in Ireland. There's 31 local authorities. All the innovation in this space is not just happening in Dublin, it's happening elsewhere as well. We're part of the All Ireland Smart City Forum, and we're hearing stories as to what's happening in Limerick, Galway, Cork. Belfast has got a lot of funding to look at this space. They're also part of that forum. So, but it's despite some service owners coming to us and being proactive, it's all about building relationships. If you build a relationship and you build trust, that they trust us to work on a project with them, you're halfway there.
Okay, so that's really fascinating to see how that's built. But you mentioned the trends that are happening globally. So maybe Ismael, I'll turn to you. How do you see smart cities developing globally, or what are the global trends?
Yeah, here mainly I can see that there are, in terms of technological solutions, I think that I would say that there can be three mainly. Okay, first is artificial intelligence. The second one would be edge computing capabilities, and the third one, a digital twin functionalities. Okay, if I go to artificial intelligence, I think that this is a cascading solution that it would be embedded in every solution that we are going to provide. So if we are talking about parking solutions, waste management, efficiency, energy efficiency, embed, we have to apply artificial intelligence in order to streamline the processes, the different processes. We have to keep in mind as well that for doing that, we will need historical data, because in the end, in order to apply this kind of algorithms that learn by itself, we have to figure out which are the patterns, or which would be the patterns in terms of gaining and doing this, let me say, this improving these services, okay? In terms about edge computing, when I show you the last slide about smart city solution, global solution, if you remember, there were the three elements that was the collecting data, the connectivity, and the platform, okay? So far, in terms of architecture point of view, this solution was a centralized solution. I mean, all the intelligence is on the cloud, is on the platform. I think that this is going to change, okay? With the new services that will come, especially with the 5G technology, solutions are going to change, and we are going to need that intelligence goes from the cloud to the edge, okay? Let me explain a use case that it's now in vogue because the COVID-19, okay? Now I know that different cities, especially in Barcelona, I know that in Amsterdam as well, they are looking for, let me say, monitoring people in real time, okay? Because they have to see if the people wear a mask, a facial mask, or about the temperature, or about as well, which is the minimum distance between them, okay? So with this kind of solution, in order to take and to collect these KPIs, we will need to do the process locally. What does it mean? That the intelligence should be near to the camera, because it doesn't make sense to send all this streaming video to the cloud, okay? So in the end, all the local processes would be on the edge. So edge computing, and only the mainly KPIs, the useful information, will go to the cloud. Okay. This is an example that we can see, like edge computing capabilities should be a must. And in that solution, we can see as well the machine learning algorithms, because in order to recognize if a person wears a facial mask, we need to train this algorithm in order to take this KPI. Okay.
Okay.
And for me, the last trend will be digital twin. Okay, digital twin means to do a digital replica of a physical element. Okay, we can consider a district, a city, a factory, whatever that we can and we want to simulate and doing tests, providing new kind of data, sensorizing, and see how to streamline their processes. We can use this kind of technology about digital twin.
Okay, so Alan, heard about a digital twin, edge computing, lots of sensors and cameras gathering all this data. Is that what a smart city is? Just deploying all of this sensor technology and fiber around a city, and then you're a smart city? Or is there something more to it than that?
Yeah, I mean, the technology and comms is the unlocker of the conversation. It unlocks the opportunities to execute a public service in a better way. So in terms of the sequence of conversations we would have around a piece of technology, let's say it's a sensor going on to a bin, or a flooding sensor, or something doing footfall analytics, let's say basic sort of IoT based sensors. There's a bit of show and tell of the tech and what it can do, but very quickly you're then on to, okay, well, who are the stakeholders needed to tease out the new business process here? What are we trying to achieve? What are the KPIs that we want to track? And then we're always mindful of, if we're very much in the innovation phase of introducing these technologies, there's a handover to business as usual activities within the councils.
Okay.
And that transition, there's change management aspects as well. So trying to convince people to do things differently is always an interesting conversation when it comes to introducing new technology. So everything Ismael has said there, and everything that the technology brings to deliver a smart city is great. And it, like I said, it unlocks deeper conversations about how something can work.
Okay. So informed decision making.
Yep.
What do you think, Ismael? Is that from an infrastructure provider? Is that what it is?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think that in the end, if we have to, let me say, to build the smart building blocks for a smart city, I think that we have to start we are an infrastructure operator, so we have to say that for me, in my opinion, the best way to do that is to doing this backbone. Okay, we will need connectivity, but not only in Dublin, across Ireland, because in the end, I think that any territory, any county council has the rights to offer to its citizens, let me say, digital services. So I think that we have to put the basis, we have to connect as much as possible, and then we can leverage on the top with different use cases, according to the necessities of every county council as well.
Okay. And is the way to do that, is it this smart, obviously we're the Smart Sandyford district, is that the approach to do that? Or what's the best approach to bringing these things to scale? Maybe Alan, what do you think?
Moving from pilot to scale, is that the question?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the pilots have to be successful, and up front, I think we as well as other smart city programs might have been guilty of death by pilots. we need to get better at tracking, well, what does success mean out of doing a pilot, and close off pilots if they're not working. Get a bit ruthless on this, because the scope of the smart city area is so vast.
Yeah.
You could spend forever doing pilots. So, just robust project governance and clarity on what the technology aspires to deliver upfront always helps. And once you get that over the line, then you can scale up. One of the other big reasons for doing pilots is to inform follow-on significant tender processes. So it's not a smooth, happy path that a successful pilot immediately gets scaled up. Okay. There's a kind of an evaluation that, okay, we've learned from the pilot. Now we're going to go through from a government side, a public procurement process, and we're a lot wiser as to what we put into that tender process to get the latest and greatest from the market. So that's a big reason why cities do these pilots, is to inform subsequent procurement.
Okay. Ismael?
Yeah, here I'm totally agree with Alan, because in the end, especially we as a Cellnex, we are involving in this kind of, let me say, solutions for cities during the last 10 years, okay? And we have done lots of pilots in order to check the technology, because although nowadays IoT is more mature, okay? If you go 5 years back, sensors have problems, it doesn't work properly.
Yeah.
Another issue here is that as Alan said, we have to see how we evaluate if a pilot works properly or not, because we have to take into consideration not only, let me see, the economical point of view, but the social one as well. Because, for instance, if we want to implement a parking solution in order to do a park and ride and not letting cars go to the inner center, in terms of economical point of view, there is not, let me say, which are the tangibles for doing that. It's more from an environment perspective than not from an economical one, okay? This is one of the points that I think that they are really relevant in order to how to think about how to evaluate these POCs and if they are working or not. And for sure, I think that we have to start with that, testing the technology, testing which is the purpose. And once we have achieved that this is okay, we have to scale up for the first district, city, and then the whole region, I think.
So Alan, maybe you mentioned the governance and that the importance of that for these projects. What sort of risks are there then, or dangers even, with these smart city programs, like managing all this data? What's involved there?
Yeah, I suppose, well, there's a few risks, but probably the number one risk is the assumption from afar would be that a smart city program or a city is run by a single entity or a single body, which is absolutely not the case in Western Europe. I think if you look to the States, it might be a different model where the mayor has more autonomy or oversight across multiple sectors to change how a city operates. In Dublin, for example, we have many public bodies looking after many different aspects of the city, from energy to transport, to health, to policing. So if you pick one of them, let's say transport, there are many public bodies and now private operators in the transport world that have to collaborate together to tackle that topic. And the danger is that one of those agencies, and that this happens elsewhere as well. I mean, look to London. It's got 32 boroughs, 32 councils that have to work together to to collaborate on the transport issue in London, as well as TfL, etc. In Dublin, we've got 4 councils. We've got the Department of Transport, we've got the NTA, we've got TII, and many others that make up the stakeholder map for transport alone. And the risk is that one or even a few of those organizations that are very proactive and try to drive disruption and innovation just go about those changes in a sort of a silo-based approach,
right,
without the collaboration with other stakeholders. So that, I think, is a big risk, and what needs to happen to tackle those complex areas like transport is that there's better collaboration amongst the local stakeholders.
And is Smart Dublin facilitating that conversation?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned MaaS, or Mobility as a Service, earlier on in the opening remarks. Yeah, that's one of the projects that we feel we're leading the conversation on with the right stakeholders in the room. We've probably missed 1 or 2 stakeholders along the way that we need to bring into that circle. But that's an example of the digital transformation of the transport sector, which would need to be done in a collaborative way across transport stakeholders. Yeah.
Great. I do want to come back to your predictions for what the future lies to 2030, but just before we go to that, conscious of time, and I want to thank the people who've used the Q&A function and written their questions in. So I might just turn to the audience's questions. So the first one there is, given the chance to start over, what would be the key elements needed in an integrated digital master plan to enable Sandyford Smart District to be smart? If you could, almost a greenfield site, what would you do?
Gosh, can I ask you that question, Conor? Yeah. Okay. Whoa, jeez, tricky one. From afar, my view on Sandyford, if you had a chance to draw it again, and I don't know if this happened back in the day when it was first tabled to create a business district there, but successful districts have a kind of a sense of identity, or that kind of clustering effect. So Galway's associated with medtech. You've got the IFSC, the city centre, fintech, a lot of pharma down in Cork, for example. So I don't know if that was something Sandyford wanted to achieve back in the day, but it's again, it's just my own personal opinion. I don't know if Sandyford has that kind of clustering brand, if you like. And the benefits of that kind of cluster strategy is that you get obviously like-minded organizations in a single district doing the kind of same thing, and the spin-off of that is that you have a pretty decent pool of talent that just might move around, but stay within the district. You know, they're not going to fly off and go somewhere else. They'll probably just move around organizations if they feel they have to move. And on the back of that, if you had that kind of clustering effect, the digital requirements or the smart city requirements of that cluster starts to become a bit more definitive. And we could have, and it's always that sequence: define the business requirements and then deliver the technology to meet the requirements. So if you had that kind of cluster, then you could define the digital needs or build the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, to make sure that cluster is world class. So there we go.
Absolutely. I would take the moment just to say, I think having come from previously an industrial estate to now a business district, I think Sandyford has come a long way and almost got over some of those legacy planning issues. And what is happening now with the likes of MasterCard coming in, Microsoft coming in, you have massive global giants, not necessarily all in the same cluster as you said, but they are working together in the district, which is excellent and great to see. But maybe Ismael, I'll turn to you. We have a question for you specifically. Pilot projects and technologies are usually implemented or tested in Dublin. But do you see potential in other cities in Ireland? And what do you think it should be to strengthen in Ireland?
Okay, I definitely think that yes, all these new technologies should be implemented not only in Dublin, but in the rest of county councils across Dublin, okay? Because in the end, focuses on the different needs that every county council may have, okay? But for sure that this technology should be applied everywhere, because in the end, when we try to provide this kind of technologies, is for bridging digital divide, okay? So if we only put this in the, let me say, where operators have their business model or in prosperous districts, it's not the way. It's not, we are not doing in a very well way the services, okay? So for me, in that question, for sure that we have to scale this and to implement or test it first, why not in other district, in other city, and then we can scale in Dublin. So it could be otherwise, okay? And in terms of the strengthen, which are the services, I think here, the same as did before, I think that we will need this, let me say, this connectivity layer. We should, in fact, we are going to, let me say, do a premise. We are going to implement an IoT network in Dublin. Sorry, not in Dublin, in Ireland, in whole Ireland. Okay. Wow. So I think that we have first provide connectivity. When I say connectivity, I'm talking about every kind of connectivity. For sure that we have to have, let me say, IoT networks available. I know that there in Ireland, we have Sigfox technology, BT, that is the let me say, the network operator, but we can, let me say, implement other kind of networks as well.
Yeah, I know you're also doing the IoT trial with Offaly County Council, so it's not, while you are doing things with us in Dublin, it's not just solely Dublin focused, which is great. I think we've maybe time just for a quick run through of maybe a lighter question on what your predictions are up to 2030, just before we wrap up. So maybe Alan first, what would you say the best predictions for the future of smart cities are in one or two topics maybe?
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna assume that we get over this COVID-19 stuff. So imagine some sort of new normal presents itself. So to offer maybe three areas where I think will be by 2030. So energy and at the environmental side and energy efficiency, I think big push for domestic and commercial operations to be in the micro generation space, so to become prosumers, getting rewarded for feeding into a smart grid.
Okay.
We'll also have more renewables, I believe, onto that grid as well, so we'll have cheaper energy. And the urban design and planning process, we spoke about digital twins earlier on. I think digital twins will be par for the course by 2030 in terms of how citizens can engage with new planning proposals. They can visualize and touch and feel and interact with significant urban design proposals coming from both Planola or from local government. And then in the mobility space, a combination of probably, you could use the term remote working is zero mobility. So hopefully we won't see the return of volumes of people commuting, arguably unnecessarily in some cases. So zero mobility could be a new world, and people are fully equipped to work remotely, be it from home or from regional hubs that we hear different organizations and even councils setting up in different jurisdictions. And then EVs, I think, will be predominant.
It's electric vehicles.
The electric vehicles, yeah. And then finally on the mass stuff, mobility as a service. So despite the current fears around public transport and shared mobility, I think that'll pass. And just from a sustainability point of view, there will be more shared mobility and integration of public transport with micromobility operations, which we're already seeing. I mean, micromobility in Dublin, be it bike sharing schemes or car club schemes, is already happening. So I think you'll see more of that in the next 10 years.
Okay, brilliant. What about you, Ismael? What do you think?
Well, I totally agree with Adam in that terms about mobility. For me, mobility would be on demand. And I think that people, especially the Z generation, they are not going to drive cars because in the end, if we have a good public services, we don't need it. Okay, so as much as we can connect in terms of infrastructure and do the last mile as well with a scooter or another kind of transport would be welcome. And I think as well that everything that is prone to be connected will be connected. So in the end, in 10 years time, I think that we will connect everything that as we can. Okay. Drones, well, I think that would be amazing technology that we even now imagine now. So autonomous cars, vehicles, drones with delivery, and why not to transport us from one point to another? I don't know. I think that in 10 years time would be the 6G will arrive. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that it will be totally different from now on. And as Alan said about working at home, working remotely, for sure that it will stay. Okay. I only hope that children go to school as well as soon as possible, because in the end you are not teleworking, you are surviving in my case. But yes, I think that it will be like that.
Absolutely. I think that's just about all we have time for today. I think we could have talked about any one of those topics for the entire webinar. But I think from what you've said, the most important ones are looking at how innovation is primarily, the focus has to be on improving the people who are living and working in these cities, on improving their lives. It's almost a means to an end. Scaling is really important. Initial testing and piloting in these testing districts, but then looking to roll out the technologies across the city as a whole. And then in terms of the wider trends, I think the digital twin is a big one that we're looking at how it's going to reshape how planning architecture is done from the ground up, but also the edge computing and how all of these sensors are feeding into the likes of the smart brain from Cellnex or different platforms, and the amount of energy consumption that's associated with that is interesting. But I just want to point out you should see on the screen there 2 links. So if you want to go to data@smartdublin.ie, or you can go to our public Trello board and see some of the projects that Alan was talking about. I'd also like to thank our partners, so Enable and Connect in Trinity College Dublin, Sandyford Bid, Smart Dublin, and Dundee Down County Council. These webinars will take place monthly, so looking forward to joining you next month on the 14th of July, where we'll be discussing more in depth of Alan's favorite topic of mass and transport. And as always, if you're interested in getting involved with Smart Sandyford or any of our projects, please do get in touch. Thank you. See you next time.